And this is the moderator. To clarify, we will begin the vehicle safety inspection program right here. And it looks like we are ready to begin that right now. Thank you, Chief Dre.
Thank you, moderator. That's Ann Fisher with the Department of Consumer Affairs. And next time when we're doing two regulatory workshops or public workshops, we'll give a 15-minute break. But we scheduled this for 11 a.m. right on the heels of our first workshop. This is our second of the two workshops dedicated to provisions of AB 471, a bill chaptered last year, a bill signed into law by the governor. Significant reforms to the Automotive Repair Act. Already dealt with the ARD applications in the first workshop, and the topic for this workshop is the vehicle safety inspection program that is spelled out in that legislation. The bill, as I said, which was signed into law last year, took effect in January. Several of the provisions do not have start dates other than as soon as we can get there with regulations. This provision, dealing with the vehicle safety inspection program, calls for a delayed implementation date of January 1, 2024, to give us enough time to develop regulations, get all of the pieces together to transition from our current lamp and brake licensing and enforcement programs, our regulatory programs dealing with lamp and brake, and transition those to a more comprehensive vehicle safety inspection program that would bring in the current lamp and brake programs as well as add in other safety features of the vehicle. Recognizing, of course, that this doesn't have to be the our only opportunity to do that we can build upon it as technology changes with the automobile and obviously our readiness to implement various safety features of the vehicle. What comes to mind is the ADAS features of the vehicle that are not our plans to incorporate into this program on day one, on January 1, 2024, but sometime down the road after we have captured enough information and data to be ready to roll that out to the industry that will ultimately be responsible for performing these inspections. I want to remind everyone that this is a vehicle safety inspection program limited to salvage titled vehicles. It's not an inspection that's for all vehicles. That's our lamp and brake programs currently, as well as smog check is required of any salvage title vehicle that's going to be, that title is going to be resurrected and put that vehicle back on the road, has to have a lamp, brake, and smog inspection. This legislation envisions that lamp and brake would be replaced by a more comprehensive vehicle safety inspection program. And then the smog check also would occur. So having said all that as a brief introduction, I'll turn it over to our presenter today, Matthew Gibson. We do not actually have unlike the first workshop, we do not actually have regulatory text drafted. We plan to do that between now and July, when we hope to have another workshop on this topic. But today is kind of reviewing with all of our interested parties our plans, kind of lay out, give you an outline of what that inspection will look like. And then as we walk away from today's workshop, we'll start putting pen to paper or fingers to the keyboard to start drafting that regulatory text. It'll be somewhat similar to what we do with smog check. There'll be regulations, and then there'll be a manual or a handbook that's incorporated by reference, that's actually specifically mentioned in the regulatory text, so that that'll have all the different safety systems that we'll be inspecting in this manual or handbook, as well as the ability to fail a vehicle that doesn't satisfactorily pass all of those inspection requirements. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Matthew Gibson from the Bureau's Executive Office. Matt comes to us from the Field Operations and Enforcement Division, where he worked in Southern California in field operations, overseeing field offices down in Southern California. Then a few years back moved up to Sacramento area and is working prior to this current assignment as our enforcement operations branch, where all of the cases involving actions that are taking disciplinary actions involving automotive repair dealers are reviewed. He was working in that shop here at the Bureau before transitioning to the Executive Office to be our point person on all things related to this legislation, AB 471. Thank you and welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Pat. And again, I'm Matthew Gibson. I'm a program manager in the Bureau's Executive Office. And we're here to do the first workshop on the Vehicle Safety Inspection Program. And as Pat mentioned, this workshop's a little different than the ones we've done earlier this year, even earlier this morning. As we have no regulation text, we're really just reviewing and looking for feedback on the direction the Bureau is going with this new program. So AB 471, as we know, creates a vehicle safety inspection and certification program by January 1st of 2024 that will, at a minimum, combine and ultimately replace the Bureau's current lamp and brake inspection programs. The Bureau has solicited input from stakeholders on various aspects of the new program. My PowerPoint presentation today is 10 slides and will cover the decisions that we have made as a result of the feedback we received from the questions we posed to our external and internal stakeholders earlier this year. So I want to reiterate something I said at the January Bureau Advisory Group meeting, which is that BAR is considering what we're considering when we're making decisions about how to implement the new program. We are considering the financial impact for initial implementation, such as the additional equipment costs for stations, the additional inspection costs for consumers. We are considering a phased-in approach, as Pat was alluding to ensure the licensed technicians and stations can reliably and accurately perform the required inspection. And we're trying to determine how best to use existing systems and infrastructure for the new program. In January, BAR requested assistance in implementing the new program and asked for feedback at the Bureau Advisory Group meeting. We also sent an email to our stakeholders, and even internally at BAR, we were looking for feedback on these following topics, which was, how do we verify that the vehicle being inspected was actually inspected? How do we know that the licensed technician was the one who performed the inspection and certified the vehicle? What systems, additional systems, and what additional items should be inspected as part of the vehicle safety inspection program? And how do we best transition from the brake and lamp station adjuster licenses to the new vehicle safety station technician licenses? Let's see. So based on industry feedback, oops, I think I skipped a slide. My bad.
I think you did. Yeah.
Yeah, so based on industry feedback and internal discussions, BAR concluded the new inspection system should share hardware with the onboard inspection system, including any biometric scanner and data acquisition device, require an onboard diagnostic scan on 2000 and newer vehicles consistent with the Smart Check program. And so these things, in addition, these things will allow us to verify vehicles and technicians. And based on that data, these requirements could assist us in developing a second phase of the program that can include the ADAS scan, or a scan of the advanced driver assistance systems. So based on this industry feedback and internal discussions, we concluded the new inspection should consist of 9 separate parts. The first part is the onboard diagnostic scan for 2000 and newer vehicles. It's consistent with the Smart Check program, which I had just mentioned on the prior slide. We're also going to be doing an inspection of the lighting system, which is consistent with the current lamp inspection that we perform through our lamp inspection program. We'll be doing a brake inspection system, which is consistent with our current brake inspection that is done through our brake inspection program, but we will be including an inspection of the ABS warning light that is not currently part of that program. The fourth part is an inspection of the passenger compartment, which will include the mirrors, the windshield, the rear window, windshield wipers, seats, seat belts, child seat latch systems, and latch is actually an acronym. It stands for lower anchors and tethers for children. Also, a visual inspection of airbags that can be visually seen without disassembly, and an inspection of the supplementary restraint system or SRS warning light. We're also going to inspect the tires and the wheels, which will include the tires or the wheels or the rims, depending on which term you choose to use, the tire pressure monitoring system warning light, and temporary spare tire. We're also going to do an inspection of the steering and suspension, which will include all steering and suspension components and any steering and suspension warning lights. We'll inspect the body structure, which will include all body panels, frame and unibody integrity, and fuel system. There'll be a road test, which will include an inspection of the horn to make sure that it works. The dashboard, see if the dashboard warning lights come up while the vehicle is actually being driven. There'll be a stopping test, and also we'll be evaluating the vehicle control or the ability to control the vehicle. And lastly, there'll be a safety recalls. We'll be checking to see if there's any open safety recalls on the vehicle through Carfax. This is something we currently do through the smog check program when a vehicle has a smog inspection. So we're just rolling it into this program too. So BAR received a wide variety of diverging responses on how to best transition to the new safety licenses. The reason we may have ended up with diverging responses is because we may not have been specific enough in the question that we asked. We've received several recommendations on how best to beta test the new program, and that wasn't exactly what we were looking for. We're trying to obtain input on the best and most efficient way to transition lamp and brake stations and technicians to new safety licenses so that we have a fully operational program on day one. So perhaps that's one of the issues we can discuss as we have comments today. But that is the end of my PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Matthew. I think we're open, moderator, to comments from the public. See, we have roughly 66 attendees.
Exactly, and someone already has their hand up. Edwin Becker, I'm going to go ahead and send you a request to unmute your microphone while I open up the Q&A feature of WebEx. And you're unmuted, Edwin.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Before I get into my comments, my first initial question is just for clarification. This program is only for prior salvage vehicles. This is not for like a biannual inspection for all cars on the road?
Yeah, so thinking of it the way that it's actually structured, we build this program, right? Just like we build the Smart Check program or the lamp and brake inspection program, and we monitor it, right? And we regulate it. But DMV actually says how the program is used. Right now, our lamp and brake inspection systems, which is what this new program is going to replace, is used for reviving salvage titles. It's also used for emergency vehicles and ambulances through the salvage program. I'm sorry, through CHP. But yeah, it's not going to, right now, DMV is not requiring this as a biannual inspection, no.
And our next request for comment is from Dave Kusa. Dave, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone and then let you know when you're unmuted.
Thank you again. Hello again, everybody. So Matt, couple questions on the braking distance test and the vehicle control test. I'm concerned we'll have problems making that objective. That's my definition of vehicle control and yours may be totally different. So that we have to make that available. I mean, the ability from technician to technician to come up with the same results. And then something that I just considered based on the presentation is, the lamp and brake inspection prices vary, across the board from whatever shop is doing. I know I don't think we have an intent of setting a price, but many times a vehicle salvage vehicle that's coming out of salvage is, you know, the only car somebody can possibly afford. You know, and I'm all for doing this, don't get me wrong, but we'll have to consider you know, pretty thorough inspection, right? You know, just running through what you were just talking about, you know, in my head. You know, as my shop, I would have all the equipment all ready to do this. We don't do lamp and brake, but I have this equipment already, right? But you know, this couple hours probably to, you know, completely do this inspection, complete the paperwork, so on and so forth. So, you know, anywhere these days, you know, shop hourly rates are, depending where you are in the state, anywhere $150 to $250 an hour. So, you know, potentially a $300 to $500 inspection if it's done up at a straight hourly rate. You know, and as a coach and consultant for businesses, I would be, you know, telling my clients that you're really going to have to do 1.5 your hourly rate because there's no parts involved, to make this a profitable business model for a shop to do. So I can see that being a barrier for many people, if this is truly going to be, you know, that 2 hour type inspection. So that would be the end of my comments.
So first off, I'm on the stopping test. The stopping test that would be rolled into the new program is going to be the one that already exists within the current brake inspection program.
Okay.
And there's actually distances prescribed as far as based on vehicle type and speed.
Okay.
So at turning 20 miles an hour, was a vehicle should stop within 25 feet. But then for vehicle like you know, vehicles over a certain weight or vehicles that have trailers, there's a longer distance that's required. It's pretty specific as opposed to being like, I don't know, arbitrary. I think the point is that the part of it that's most open to interpretation is the idea that this, when you stop, it has to be smooth. But short of that, I feel like it's pretty specific. On the vehicle control test, I agree with you. We're going to have to write something in a way that is pretty specific about what we are trying to capture. I'd imagine it would be something about the vehicle being at speed. So we're not talking about something that maybe around 30 miles or higher. Probably the idea that it doesn't make left hand or right hand turns all on its own. Maybe that there's no vibrations or inability to control the vehicle. I mean, it will. Hopefully, we can come up with something that is acceptable to everybody. And obviously, we're trying to make sure the vehicle is safe. So we want to make sure that the technician can feel comfortable based on the test drive that the vehicle is safe or not, based on the standard that we set. As far as the inspection, I will tell you, I think on lamp and brake runs, when I was reviewing cases prior to the current assignment I'm in, I think shops are getting about, I think it was like 125 to 130 for a lamp and brake inspection with certs. The only part of this program that the price would be set on would be just like Smart Check, as far as the cert price, whatever we charge for the cert, obviously can't be passed along to the consumer. I imagine this test may take a little bit longer than a current lamp and brake inspection, but a lot of the inspection items are actually visual inspections, and some of the ones related to suspension and steering are already supposed to be part of the brake inspection anyway, as in there's supposed to be an integrity test of the vehicle at the point you're doing the brakes. Not that you would fail it, but the idea that you could see if there was a problem with the suspension or the steering of the vehicle when you're doing the brake inspection. A lot of the new stuff that I'm including, as far as the passenger compartment, again, it's a visual inspection from inside the vehicle, just so that you can do the seatbelts work, and are the seats securely fastened to the vehicle. You know, make sure that the lights do what they're supposed to do. Do they run the bulb check, or are they constantly illuminated? So hopefully, I'm trying to be aware of what we're asking and trying to control for, again, equipment costs for the shops. As a matter of fact, I think the only new piece of equipment most shops would have to have would be well, I'll call it the safety inspection system, but otherwise you would call it an OIS. And I think a tire tread depth gauge. Otherwise, all the existing equipment they have for a lamp and brake inspection program will just transition right over to the new program, or at least that's what we're envisioning.
Good, thank you.
And our next request for comment is we're actually going to go back with Edwin Becker, as we have not completed his comments. So
yeah, I thought
Edwin,
you might have more. I think that was his initial question, because he said his first question this anyway, but yes.
Yes, so Edwin,
Yes.
you're unmuted again.
Thank you. So I want to now first comment on what the previous person mentioned about this is roughly a 2-hour inspection, and they would want to charge 1.5 the normal labor rate because there's no parts involved. That I don't agree with looking at it that way, and I can say this as someone who's held safety inspector licenses in several other states where making sure your vehicle safe is a biannual inspection. With anything like this, the state is asking for a shop's help in completing something, but the shop is getting a free customer out of it. And when you're checking tie rods, ball joints, brakes, that's your opportunity to sell them on safety stuff. That's a customer you wouldn't have had in the first place. As far as the time, yes, what's all currently done takes a little while, but the safety inspection itself, if you're pulling it in, checking the seat belts, taking off 2 wheels, checking the suspension, measuring tires, it can be done in about 30 minutes. So I know there isn't any text yet. I would love to offer my services towards that. I'm intimately familiar with other states' programs, but I hope we don't get lost in the weeds, because it sounds like the point of this is vehicle safety, and that's for anyone who's a technician who is going to be working on these things and getting licensed. We know what a car should feel like when it stops from 20 miles an hour. We want to make sure the wheel's not falling off. We want to make sure the ball joint's not falling out. Basic stuff. It's a fairly simple addendum that I'm amazed California hasn't already had.
Thank you for your comment.
Thanks, Matthew.
All right, so the next request for comment is from Michael. And Michael, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone. Let's see, we have a Michael from a telephone connection and a computer connection. So if you could raise your hand, Michael, that you were wondering if the presentation is available by website or email. Oh, thank you for clarifying. I sent you a request to unmute in case you would like to present that question yourself. His question is if this presentation is available via website or email.
It will be on YouTube, just like we post all of our stuff after the conclusion, right, Anne?
Yes, that's our plan.
I think it's also on our website. I should say that too. As far as the PowerPoint, that'll be on our website or in our workshops section where we post all that information prior to having the workshops.
Fantastic. So our next request for comment comes from Jack Molodanoff. Jack, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. One moment. And it looks like Jack. You're unmuted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt, for the presentation. I do have some just comments or questions, a couple of them. With regard, I know you're focused on financial impact. Have you estimated how much it will cost so far, what the equipment will cost so far based on those 9 areas?
Well, over and above the existing equipment requirements of a lamp and brake station, I mean, a tire depth gauge is only a couple bucks. I mean, that I don't know if I'd really include that. The actual equipment we're thinking about requiring right now is the OIS, and that's not going to be cheap. I mean, it's what Smart Check program use. I think it's like $1,500 right now, because not just for the data acquisition device, but also for the laptop and the printer and the barcode reader. So
yeah, because I know
that's what we're looking at, I think.
Yeah, no, the intent of 471 was to keep the costs, in terms of the equipment, to be, reasonable. And most of the inspection would be, visual primarily. So yeah, the data equipment, I think it's posted on the website. I think it's like $1,500, but the additional stuff, I don't know if, scanners, computers and all that, the whole package could be anywhere between $4,000 to $5,000 total. If someone wants to get into the game here and doing vehicle safety inspections. But no other equipment is being considered at this point, just other than the dad?
No, just the dad. And then also, like I said, the only other additional piece of equipment, I mean, I don't know that we, I don't know there was an original requirement to have a tire pressure gauge in the brake inspection program, but that's a requirement
Right.
now. And then I would think that would be a requirement for the tire inspection because I'd want them to check tire pressure. And then also, again, a way to measure the tread depth of a tire. And so other than that, when we're thinking about how this thing will be structured, I can't think of any additional equipment other than what I've just said at the moment.
In terms of the visual inspections, you had a number 4, the compartment. It talks about seats, and I assume it's not going to, when you inspect seats, it's not going to be for tears or damage. You're looking to, I'm assuming it's to make sure the seats are reinforced or they're bolted down. Is that really?
That's right. I mean, I don't know that an ugly car seat makes a car unsafe. Otherwise, my car might not be safe. I would just say I'm looking for seats that are securely fastened to the vehicle and that hold a fixed position, as in the bottom doesn't slide uncontrollably forward and backward, like if you could think about a bucket seat, or that the back of the seat, again, stays in a locked position, that it doesn't fly forward when you hit the brakes. But that's what we're talking about when we're talking about seats.
And number 7, I think you talk about the body panels. Again, are those going to be visual? Or are you talking about measuring, or what do you envision there?
On the body panels, kind of looking at all the exterior body panels, if we talk about the doors, for example, we're not measuring the car. We will be visually inspecting the car. So one of the things we'll be looking for is, like, if there's any existing collision damage that would affect the functionality of the panel in another collision, that would be a problem. If you think about doors, we're probably going to be opening and closing the doors to make sure that they don't jam inside of they don't bind inside of the door jamb, that they hit the latch, and most of them have a 2-latch system so that they actually fully close. Make sure that the hood latches and opens and closes without binding. Same thing for any lift gate or, trunk. Again, also there would be a visual inspection of the under portion of the vehicle. So like trying to look at, the unibody portion of the vehicle, the frame, the bottom part of the passenger compartment. We'd be looking for any existing collision damage that would cause that vehicle, again, to be unsafe. It wouldn't function as it was intended in another collision. If there's holes in the floor panel that would allow gases from the exhaust system to enter the passenger compartment, that would be a problem. So that would be one of the things we'd probably be looking for. So yeah, it's just, that's kind of what it comes down to.
Okay. The last part of it is the transitioning from brake and lamp to this vehicle safety inspector license. So have you given thought and how, some of the current brake and lamp folks are going to kind of transition over? They're going to get grandfathered in, or they're going to have to take an additional test, and then the new folks who want to get in, I assume there's going to be some sort of test requirements to become licensed as a vehicle safety inspector technician.
We've had discussions. I think that's kind of what we're trying to get feedback on. Maybe do you have any feedback on that related to, do you believe lamp and brake adjusters should be grandparented in some way?
Well, I mean, for some of obviously the brake and lamp stuff they've already done. I mean, there may be, obviously you've got additional requirements here that they're going to need to make sure they're qualified to do, but I have not given it much thought. But it's something that I wanted to at least explore and see, where your guys were at this point. So yeah, I'll be open to listening to some of the technicians or brake and lamp folks who, what their thoughts are on this. And finally, I was just thinking about this. So as I know, this is limited to the program is limited to reviving salvage, total loss salvage vehicles, but nothing here would prevent an ARD to get a license, vehicle safety inspection license on their own if they don't, and they can obviously do the reviving of the salvage vehicles, but they can also, nothing prevents them from inspecting vehicles that maybe consumers are buying used vehicles and they want to go get them inspected, and nothing would prevent them to get one of these licenses and have and these would be the minimum requirements. They can go ahead and perform such a service for a consumer, right? There's nothing that would prevent them from doing that.
No, there's nothing that would prevent them from doing that. Matter of fact, I think that the way our OIS system is set up would follow into the safety inspection system, in that you could do a full inspection and not issue a certificate.
Yeah, well, the reason I'm asking is that shops are trying to figure out, hey, I don't do that many, I don't do that many, revive salvage vehicles, but I do have consumers that come to me when they buy a vehicle and they want their car inspected, right? And then as a consumer, I would feel much more comfortable having someone who's licensed by the state, by the VAR, that they're a vehicle safety, inspector, technician, or whatever you want to call them. I think there's more confidence there. So this may give shops, ARDs, an opportunity to expand their business, and by obtaining one of these licenses. Those are my comments. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, the only thing, Jack, good comments. The only thing that's different now about that, because safety inspections are done by shops now. I know I've been in the market for used vehicles, and I've said, let me take it down to my shop and see what they say about the vehicle. I know a lot of people do that, but the only difference in that is there's no uniformity to that inspection, right? It varies from one shop to the other. This obviously brings uniformity to that inspection process.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our next request from comment is from Joanna Johnson. Joanna, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And you're unmuted.
Fantastic. Hi, thank you. Thanks again, Chief DeRay and Matt. Quick question about using Carfax automatically for the program. I'm just wondering if you vetted NHTSA's Safer Car app as an alternative.
I don't have an answer for that. I will tell you that the Carfax is being used as part of the smog check and smog check program right now. So every vehicle that gets a smog check inspection, Carfax is pinged, and they provide safety recall information back, and that information's then put on the vehicle inspection report. So there might be something else, and I would assume that our engineering department had taken that into consideration at the point that they chose Carfax, but I don't really know.
Well, the NHTSA app is actually relatively new. So to the extent that you'd already had it part of the lamp and brake program, the Carfax part, that would precede NHTSA by many years. And then
it's a relatively new feature. It just started in, I think, June of last year.
Oh, just June. Okay. Well, actually, I still think that precedes NHTSA, but this particular app, the reason I'm throwing it out there is because I'm just looking at how the expenses are ticking up here. And if to the extent that you're trying to capture the recalls, NHTSA is usually the best clearinghouse on that, just because of the reporting requirements that the auto manufacturers have with the federal government, and it's free. So just, and I can include information on that in written comments.
Okay.
And that's it for now, and thank you.
Thank you.
And our next request for comment comes from someone logged in as owner. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And you are unmuted.
Sorry, my name is Dave Livingston, and I'm just a consumer driver. I previously did drive professionally, and my comment pertains strictly to the headlamp inspection program. It's been a pet peeve of mine for over a year or so now. I do a fair amount of driving at night, and I've seen many vehicles now that have lamps that I believe exceed the current requirements by the state in the lumens, some of them also in the color factor. And I think part of the problem with this now is it's very easy and inexpensive to purchase new LED bulbs over the internet. And over the internet, you can pretty much get whatever you want, whenever you want. And I think the secondary part of that problem is then the consumers are installing these or replacing these headlamps themselves. And in the process, they're setting the headlamps particularly out of adjustment. So many occasions, I'll have oncoming traffic that will have one or both headlamps obviously out of alignment. And even to the extent on major divided highways, such as Highway 80 going up into the mountains, there's a significant space between the two highways. And at that distance, I will still have an oncoming headlight shining directly into my vehicle. So, and then I also wanted to add this, very prevalent in passenger vehicles, but it's becoming more and more common on commercial trucks, especially the semi trucks. They do a lot of driving, and especially at night, and the guys love to customize their trucks. They're changing running lights and things all the time, and that's including the headlamps. So I've talked to law enforcement about this. They agree that it's a problem, but they've acknowledged it's very difficult for them to see an oncoming vehicle, try to turn around, approach the vehicle, and to see whether it's in compliance, etc. So this idea of including this in an inspection program was very welcomely received from law enforcement and other people I've spoken to. The concern is we think it needs to be elevated beyond just a salvage vehicle type inspection and done on an annual or biannual inspection of all vehicles. And that's where the suggestion was made that perhaps this be added on to the smog inspections, which are done biannually. And in a short amount of time, we could educate the public and get everybody into compliance. And I believe the headlamp should be in both programs, the salvage program and the smog inspection program. It's a relatively quick time requirement, really relatively simple equipment required, and I think it would be a great addition to an already existing, recurring program that we have with the smog checks. That was my input. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Dave.
And our next request for comment comes from Gallo Cali BC. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone or send you a request to unmute. And you are unmuted.
A couple of things on, we're talking a lot about the safety inspection on these salvage vehicles. And I'm just wondering, it seems we're putting all of this on the consumer instead of the seller. And I don't understand why we are doing it that way. Only from the standpoint that once the person has purchased this vehicle, they take it in to get this inspection done. It fails. Most of these salvage sellers have a one and done deal where you buy it as is and there is no recourse for them to return it. And so I think we really need to take a look at who really bears the burden of doing this salvage vehicle inspection and making sure that it passes before they can put it up for sale, or that we at least have language in an agreement on the purchase of the vehicle that all sales are conditional on it passing the state required vehicle inspection program. So that was one of the comments I had. The other one I had, and it was kind of interesting because there was a conversation as far as the inspectors and who are the inspectors. And the one thing I'd be very concerned about is if you have an ARD that is in fact a creator of these salvage vehicles, and they are also the inspector of that vehicle. I would think we need some type of language in there that precludes anyone that is a seller cannot be the inspector of the same vehicle. And I think you know why. And I think that that inspection should be required to be performed by a third party. So we don't have a situation where a conflict of interest exists. And next thing we know, we're in a similar situation that we see with the smog check program, with fraudulent smogs being created on vehicles that would have never passed the vehicle inspection. As we kind of go through the transition, I like the idea of grandfathering anyone that's currently in the brake and lamp inspection program that is current, and just adding a component for the vehicle inspection portion of it. I think that would be an important aside from where they're already at. And so those are my main comments on that, but I really have some serious concerns about the seller not bearing the burden of this vehicle inspection prior to them putting it up for sale without having some safeguards in place for the consumers.
Thank you, Gene. I'm sorry. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
And our next request for comment is from Jean Lopez.
Ah.
Jean, I'm going to go ahead and send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi, thank you again for letting me make my comments. And Matt, thanks for your presentation. Matt, regarding the tread depth gauge and the tire pressure gauge, is there any concern about having the TPMS or tire pressure monitor system diagnostic tool? And furthermore, regarding ADAS systems and OEM requirements. There's a requirement on the film thickness gauge of a plastic bumper that shouldn't exceed, I believe it's 12 mils. And so, an inspection should be performed on that plastic bumper, but that's a very expensive device. It's probably $1,800 for that plastic mil thickness gauge. And so, with ADAS and with vehicle manufacturer requirements, how are we, or will we regulate those?
So we talked about the phased-in approach, and there has been a lot of feedback on ADAS systems and wanting them to be included as part of the safety inspection program. But the more that I and we looked into it, the more we realized we may not be in a position to do it on the first phase. So what we're actually trying to do is figure out what we can figure out. So by plugging into these cars, we believe there's certain information that we can obtain. We know that different manufacturers are communicating different types of information, so it may not even be consistent like it is for OBD or onboard diagnostic systems. And so as we perform more of these inspections and get this data, it's going to put us in a position to start with doing a scan of ADAS systems to see if they are operational, as in they haven't been disabled, and also that there is no diagnostic trouble codes related to this, how those systems are functioning. I think that's where we're going to start. It's probably going to be in the second phase after we figure out what is it we're grabbing out of these cars when we plug in.
Got it. Good. Thank you.
And our next request for comment is from Gilbert Rios. Gilbert, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. Gilberto, my apologies. And you're unmuted.
Once again, thank you guys for what you do. Couple questions I had is, number one, as far as the OIS system, is that going to be part of like the smog, or is that going to be a totally different application as far as logging in to do the inspection?
So our existing OIS system is the smog inspection system for 2000 and newer vehicles, right? What we're talking about is literally that same software. Well, we're talking about a different set of software on the same device that will then you would log into separately. So from OIS, you would have an option, right? You'd have the option to do a smog check inspection, or you'd have the option to do a safety inspection. You'd log in accordingly and follow the prompts accordingly.
Perfect. And then the other question I have is, since with the smog, we're moving to the biometric login, is that also going to apply to the vehicle inspection?
Whatever's in place with smog check, when we implement this program, will be whatever's in place for safety as well. So if biometric is in place for smog check, it'll be what is going to be used for safety inspection as well.
Okay, perfect. Because you were talking about the cost as far as like the DAD device, so don't forget we need to add the cost of the biometric device also.
That's true.
When taken into consideration. And then the last question I have is, as far as the certification of the technicians, is BAR thinking about doing something similar as with the smog program where the technicians have to take the bar approved courses to get certified to be able to take the state exam?
No, I think, again, we're talking about this internally and trying to figure out the best way to approach it. Again, that's why we're looking for feedback. I think where we're approaching is going to be more like what we do with lamp and brake, meaning that there's going to be some sort of an initial licensing inspection for people who do not have lamp and brake licenses, so that there'll probably be some sort of ASC requirement. They'll have to pass this examination, and they would get licensed. What we're trying to decide is we have this whole population of lamp and brake adjusters, and the lamp inspection and the brake inspection are like the largest part of the safety inspection. And can we use the fact that these people have already obtained these licenses and have to retest every 4 years in order to maintain their licenses? Is there some consideration that should be given to these adjusters and getting them into a safety technician license? Because at some point, the lamp and brake program is going to go away after the vehicle safety inspection program is going to be implemented.
And Gilberto, I did mute you because we had some echo, but I sent you a new request to unmute if you have anything further.
No, that's it. Thank you very much. And yeah, as far as well, I guess my question would be is in the writing of the requirements, is, for example, are the ASCs actually going to be required or some sort of experience? Because right now, as far as brake and lamp is concerned, theoretically speaking, anybody that can pass that test can technically do a brake and lamp inspection.
That is true. Yeah, there is no ASC certification. There's no ASC certification requirements for the lamp or the brake adjuster licenses. You just have to be able to pass the test. That's why I think we're considering an A4, A5, and A6. Again, we're talking about it internally. I don't know if we've decided on any one thing ultimately. So I don't know. I mean, does an ASC certification mean that they have had time in industry working on these cars? I don't know if it does. I would like to think so, but short of that, that's what we're considering, some sort of a ASC requirement and then some sort of an initial examination. I think if I have existing lamp and brake adjusters who have their licenses and have been in good standing for some period of time, then I think that would probably indicate that they have some experience or training within the industry.
And Gilberto, again, I unmuted you in case you need to make any more comments.
And yeah, that would be actually pretty good, because then I guess the existing brake and lamp people would be the guinea pigs as far as testing out what's going on.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our next request for comment is from Edwin Becker. Edwin, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And you're unmuted.
Thank you. I'm hearing a lot of very good comments, and I'm glad there's so many people interested in this. There was a comment earlier about performing these safety inspections as kind of a stand-in for a pre-purchase inspection, which I think this program, and I'm speaking from experience, in other states where there are vehicle safety inspection programs, selling a vehicle with a recent inspection certification or sticker is a huge benefit. So allowing these inspections potentially to happen, even if it's not due, and allowing a certificate to be issued would be a good additional source of revenue for shops. As far as the training requirements, I think maybe I'm confused on the timeline, because it seems that in 19 months, there needs to be vehicle safety inspections and people licensed to do them. And it's going to be replacing the current brake and lamp. So do we know what date it is actually set to replace the current brake and lamp as a requirement for vehicles? Because if people have to be licensed by January 1st, 2024, then they have to have time to take the test. This means there has to be time for development of the course. So if it's required now, I'm just wondering what the overlap time would be there.
So with the chapter AB 471 that created the vehicle safety inspection program that has to be in place by January 1st of 2024, it allows for a 6-month overlap between the two programs, but it's maybe less than 6 months depending on when the regulations actually get adopted. So if the regulations get adopted prior to January 1st, 2024, it's possible that the amount of overlap between the two programs, let's just say if they're in place in September 1st or October 1st, so a full quarter, then there might only be 3 months of overlap between the two programs before, lamp and brake ends up getting sunsetted. So there's a 6-month overlap that's put into the law basically for the two.
Well, then it sounds like financially it might be in the best interest to get the licensing and everything introduced so that there is that minimization of overlap. And then the question of grandfathering in currently licensed technicians becomes moot pretty quick because no one's able to go and just ask for a brake and lamp anymore.
Yeah, well, as far as when we would have to shut down the testing of lamp and brake, I mean, we have to have some sort of discussion about when is it that we would no longer take applications for lamp and brake adjusters. I don't know when that would be exactly. Obviously, once the program doesn't exist anymore, probably wouldn't be letting people take tests for it.
Right? I would think from a technician's side, there would be a, last date because once they get their license, they're only going to have 6 months to do it or whatever it may be. So replacing the brake and lamp class and testing and training completely with the new safety inspection one, again, seems like the more economical route.
Fair enough.
And that's all at the moment. Thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you.
And then our next request for comment comes from someone logged in as Anthony. Anthony, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And we can hear you.
I actually just had my question typed in, but I can verbally mention it. I just didn't hear the entire presentation. I'm just reviewing it right now. Excuse me, but I had a question regarding from the enforcement aspect. If you have a safety inspection in place, and especially related to a salvage title vehicle, if it doesn't pass the safety inspection, what's going to be the requirement by BAR to get that vehicle up to where it needs to be in order to be driven on the highway or on the roadway? And will there be some type of mechanism that BAR is going to look at? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I was going to say that it just has to meet the standard within our handbook or however it is we write the regulations. So if you do an inspection on a vehicle and it fails the safety inspection for whatever reason, that item is going to have to be repaired, and it's going to have to go back through the inspection and pass.
Thank you. So if they are at the shop where the vehicle's being inspected, they have the choice of either doing the work themselves and driving it home or having it done at the shop.
Yeah, so they'd have the opportunity to do the work themselves if they wanted, or they can go to another shop. I think this is a little bit different than smog check in this respect because there's not going to be any fee waiver as there is with emissions.
Well, and I also think if the vehicle is in such a condition that it shouldn't be driven on the road, I would question whether it should be driven on the road and allow them to bring it somewhere else. It depends on the serious nature associated with, what kind of shape the vehicle is in. But it seems like that would need to be looked at a little bit just so the shop has a better understanding of where the boundaries are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Gilbert Rios, I am going to send you a request to unmute your microphone in case you have additional comments. Okay, thank you very much. No comments. There are no further requests for comments at this time. Shall I close the Q&A feature?
Just one last call for comments, questions. Anything, moderator?
Nothing yet.
Okay. Up. Did you?
I'd be happy to close the Q&A.
Okay, let's close the Q&A.
Sorry, Edwin Becker
Still
just
see
raised
Edwin's
his hand.
up.
Thank you. Let me send him a request to unmute your microphone, Edwin.
Thank you. Sorry for the coming right at the buzzer there. I wanted to comment again to Matthew. Who is responsible for actually getting the text of the legislation? Do you have anyone working on that currently? Because again,
So,
I would
the
be very happy to be involved.
I appreciate that. I would say that the legislation already exists. We're talking about the regulation text, and I'm responsible for the regulation text.
Sorry for mixing up my words. Yeah,
No, it's no problem.
Regulation text. Yeah, if there's any way to connect offline, I think I could be a helpful resource for this.
Okay. On my PowerPoint presentation, the last slide has my email address. So if you want to send me an email, feel free, and I will see if we could meet up and talk about the program.
Perfect. Yeah, I just noticed it's on the screen. All right, that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
No further
moderator,
requests.
We can close the.
All right, everything's closed, and I see no more raised hands.
All right, we'll adjourn this workshop. I'm actually surprised this workshop ended sooner than the first workshop, but in large part probably due to the fact that we don't actually have regulation text drafted. That will happen in time for our next workshop on this topic, which is scheduled for July. I think we've got a date picked out already. So what was that date? July 21st. It's a Thursday. It'll follow our normally scheduled quarterly bar advisory group meeting that'll take place in the morning that day. That's our plan, to have an return to in-person meetings. I would expect that the workshop will follow in person as well, following that advisory group meeting. So we'll probably return to an afternoon session for the next workshop on this topic. But that will all be shared with all of you and our attendee and our larger interested parties list, which is probably several hundred people strong. And that information will be shared at least 10 days prior to the meeting date. So stay tuned for more details about that next workshop on the vehicle safety inspection program with actual regulation text drafted and proposed. Thank you once again for your attendance. Your comments, as always, are much appreciated, very helpful as we move our regulatory programs forward. And this is by no means any exception. So appreciate all of the hard work that everyone puts into reviewing our regulation and our regulations and our presentations, and providing us valuable feedback on our efforts to implement, in this case, legislation. So thank you, and we'll see you in July.